Hello, friends. Today I'm going to have a video, probably a long one, probably two videos, but they're titled points, meaningly it is not a structured lecture. I'm not a professor, so I cannot say lecture, but there will be explanation to what's going on. So point number one, or point, first of all, Slava Ukraina. I am impressed with those people and their ability to stand up for themselves and what's right. What's right, they're denying their country the takeover of that morbid, deadly communism that Putin or Pustalinin epitomize by the continuation of his grandparents, the two brothers or the two Creed brothers, Stalin and Lenin, and whatever is in between. So yeah, hats up or hats off, and I stand up in awe of those Ukrainians. They're giving up their lives in defense of what's right and against what's wrong. That dark side in Moscow, lizard eyes, who are eyeing the West and so on. I cannot call those people, especially that fine man who destroyed the bridge early on, like the first day or second day, and lost his life in the process. I call that man a martyr. And you can accuse him of being terrorist all you want. He's not a Muslim, right? Well, for me, right now, those who are dying for their country in Ukraine and defending against that evil, I consider them martyrs. And that's enough for me. Enough said. So point, communism attack on America. Let's talk about the historic attack on America by the formal outer communism, and then I will hint at the inner communism. But if you look since the manifestation or birth of communism in the last century, Lenin and Stalin, and after them the continuation of the polity or the establishment, and through today Putin, there's not one time or a chance that the communism of Russia or communism everywhere, say for example in Cuba or China or anywhere else, that did not act and feel hostile to America, meaning the United States and the entire West for that matter, because the entire West, speaking of the people, Germans, Scandinavians, French, English, Spanish, Italians, Eastern Europeans, Polish, you know, it's in their gut to be pro-freedom and pro-Western, pro-West is in their blood, and to hate and disrespect and refuse communism is also in their guts. One doesn't have to be highly educated to know what's good and what's not. That's why the Ukrainians are defending their country. That's why the Ukrainians want to go west. They want to go west. And that's why Putin is killing civilians. And the history of the West is not clear of that, but that's a little bit complex, and I will explain that later in a different point. For normal American, whether it's black or white or anything in between, just your typical American that doesn't have shades of gray or shades of blue or shades of black or shades of whatever, they're not the type that want to go and kill, right? Just maim and kill and murder civilians, and that's not a perfect history. But that's the case. I mean, to sum it up, is this communism has been attacking the United States and trying to destroy and undermine the United States ever since it existed. We all know the standoff in Germany or in Western Europe or anywhere else for that matter. We all know that certain elements who are pro-communist in the United States driven and took the United States to Vietnam for 10 years, and the communists supported the Vietnamese against the United States. We all know the story of Cuba when they tried to sneak in ballistic missiles, nuclear warheads, and so on into Cuba, and then JFK had to push them back. And we all know many other things, the undeclared wars in South America and here and there and in Africa and in the Middle East and so on and so forth. And lately, as of late, on January 6th, when that particular president, I call him Shrimp Trump, who actually became a president, not by popular vote, or even votes at all. I mean, some voting system, electronic voting system, put him into the White House. Tried to take over with a communist method, meaningly just kill the existing people who are in the establishment and establish a new order. And that order is morbid communism. Now, before I continue this point, let me tell you about Trump. When his ancestors came from Russia, they were penniless. That's how a communist, really communist, feel about the United States, not the way I do. I'm an immigrant from an Arab descent in Syria, and I don't feel this way about reneging on the people that I worked with and so on. Sure, I have my grievances, but at the end of the day, I look at my neighbors, I look at people on the street, and I see people like I, worthy of being good and possibly being bad, you know. So when ancestors of Trump, Shrimp Trump, came from Russia, and you may say, oh, no, he didn't come from Russia, you know, like his heritage is from Germany. That's not true, folks. Small part of it is from Germany, but that guy came from that east where Putin is. And they came into this country and they were penniless. And by way of illegitimate, surreptitious and illegitimate ways and means, they acquired wealth and they don't even pay taxes due to them being supposedly genius, you know, or something like that. There are bills that people don't know about, like if you so and so, you don't have to pay taxes. Not everybody, you know. I'm not qualified, for example. Neither would I want to be qualified by lying, by surreptitious ways and means. And then he became, you know, he got money that he don't deserve. If he was like everybody else in the United States, blacks, whites, whatever, the guy would probably be homeless based on his own devices, according to his own devices and abilities and and worth, right? And then he is like Bush, you know. Bush come from that side of the world as well, the Bush family, and were born with the silver foot in their mouths, according to Ann Richards, the governor, the governor of Texas. Remember when she told, when she said he was born with the silver foot in his mouth, So. So they got their money, and now they go into the White House, for example. They become president, right? And they begin stealing trillions. I quote that Russian Trump saying in one of his rallies leading to the elections in 2016 that people, he said, trillions at stake. Oh, you just have to understand. This guy was a little bit brazen. His Russians didn't much like him for being like so open about what lurks and what is talked about in the undercurrent, in the underworld, right? So, anyways, he stole many trillions and gave it to his, investors and Russians and Iranians and so on and so forth, and sent cash to Russia and so on. And then, yet a few days ago, he comes out and says, when the war started in Ukraine, the aggression of Russia, of Putin's, I must say, Pustalinins on Ukraine, He called this country stupid. Like you became the country's president and you think it is stupid, and what? You're smart. Is that why this country is so sophisticated and so advanced and so potent and so economically was viable? Is because they're stupid? I don't think so. Like I will disagree with you, Shrimp Trim. Uh, and if you tell me that I wasn't born here, well, why don't you go back to Russia too? So Post-Stalinine would welcome you there. I don't know, he may actually beat you up for being so dumb. So, anyways, so the attack of communism on 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 America and the West, which the West in general, which is led by America, is very well documented. I don't need to lecture you folks in the elite here or in the establishment here in the US, whether it's universities or anywhere else. I do not need to really lecture you on that or narrate history to you. I think you know it better than I do. But the surprise is when the Soviet Union was destroyed in Afghanistan, you thought that the Russians were happy to get out of communism. Oh, you couldn't be more wrong, folks. Now, that's where America is dumb. Really, is really because they thought that the Russians are worthy of being salvaged and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not talking about all Russians, of course, but the post-Stalinists. Oh, they were there. You basically resurrected your own deadly enemy. This is like the rabbit rescuing a weasel. The weasel was after the rabbit, and the rabbit actually, and the weasel somehow falls into, a hole that he cannot get out from. And poor rabbit, he feels bad for the weasel, and then what? He dangles a rope for him, and then he brings him up, and guess lo and behold, the rabbit is running again for its life. That's precisely what happened when the West rescued those post-Stalinese and brought them back and then allowed them to continue as is. What they should have done is really strip the very existing Soviet Union, even after the collapse, from its nuclear weapons. And they could have easily reshaped the country forcefully, just like they do elsewhere. Instead, they just bring it back up, and then the chase is on again. The weasel is after the rabbit again. Coffee? Yeah. Poor rabbit. He's done it again. Okay. So on January 6th, we know that is the last attack that we know of, but no attacks are going on, even though now the attack on Ukraine is in fact an attack on America by communism, is in fact attack on the West by communism. The attack on Syria and the destruction of Syria and Chechnya and here and there is attack on the West, and so on and so forth. That is what I'm trying to say. Okay, that is point number one, regardless of the numbers. Point. Those coward Arabs. I want to bring something up to you here that may sound a little bit outside of the subject, on the periphery, but it can't be more relevant. During these times of your American understanding of the events and the undercurrent and the unexplained situation in the world now, political as well as economical. I remember prior to Iraq invading Kuwait, and that was a well-designed move, by the way. Later on, there are, of course, evidence. There is evidence, or evidence. There's a pile and a stack of evidence that leads to one conclusion: is that Saddam Hussein was in cohort with Ayatollah Khomeini, was in cohort with the Gulf countries. There is no doubt to that now. The evidence is piled up, and it's true, and it's real, and it's there. And before I move on, I'm going to tell you that Saddam Hussein didn't die on that on the gallows when they executed him. But nonetheless, prior to that, I remember the average American, or probably European, I haven't talked to much Europeans about that point, they thought Arabs were nothing but cowards, and sleazy, and they came upon the stage of history by way of trickery or dusting sand in the eyes and so on and so forth. Well, and when the Americans went to evict Saddam, supposedly, to evict Saddam Hussein from Kuwait. Their man, right? That man of brother of Ayatollah Khomeini, brother of Mohammed ibn Salman, brother of George W. Bush, like, we know all that by now, right? So when they went to evict him, I was working as a driver back then, and I would go into places and so on, and they would have something like this that goes with a scope rifle scope sight, uh, uh, saying that I traveled 10,000 miles to smoke a camel, right? I was, of course, offended, but things were going on, It doesn't matter whether I was offended or not, but because I really deep down inside disagreed, and I knew that erroneous notion, which was put in the minds of people, can't be more wrong. Whether it's history, whether it's their nature, the Arabs' history and their nature and so on. I knew it can't be more wrong, but I couldn't help it, You have to wait until the events have come to pass and then concluded and so on. But then those Americans, and I heard from personal people, from people, they really had this low view of the Arabs, like they thought they were nothing really, that they're waiting for the opportune moment to go in there and show them one-to-one and man-to-man what they can do to them, right? Because after 1400 years, their time has come, and only now they're going to do what they're going to do. And you can see it in their eyes, right? And the sarcasm and so on. And early on when the United States went to invade Iraq in 2003 and remove Saddam Hussein. Now, Saddam Hussein may or may not be a brother of George W. Bush, but I think he is. He's not a Muslim either. He's anti-Islamic, as a matter of fact, and he used to call the Prophet names, bad names, and so on. And he brought Western or let's say Israelis into Iraq by way of a certain Jew called Michel Aflek, and he even made statues for him, the founder of the Ba'ath Party. He's a Greek Jew from Salonique, I think. He's not even Iraqi. Yet they didn't even respect him or pay him back, like give him some kind of a carrot or something like that. They wanted to destroy him, right? Even though he was doing their bidding in Iraq. But nonetheless, eventually, when the two sides were exposed to each other, technology was stripped out after Iraq came into the war, after the United States came, and the West in general moved into Iraq, and now they're face to face, right? I wasn't hearing that I went 10,000 miles to smoke a camel slogan anymore. Why? Because now Americans began to realize that these are not the Arabs they learned they were. And ultimately, they began to sing the song that, we don't need no water, let the MF burn, and so on. The roof is on fire, right? Because now they're feeling the pain of those Arabs. Those real Arabs are nothing to trifle with, even though they don't have technology, even though they're overwhelmed with weapons, even though they're so-and-so, yet they still maintain that high spirit that was instilled in them by Islam and by that Sunni Islam, right? It's in their heart, right? And eventually, I heard one in the Pentagon saying that when you shot an Iraqi, it was a hell of a hoot. I was like, really? I don't know about that. Like I wouldn't do that myself, right? Just go shoot people. They even made a movie about this Kyle in Houston, the sniper who supposedly killed I don't know how many hundreds. But I know for certain that boy in Houston, the one who got killed eventually in Houston, like God apparently wanted to bring him quickly. He would see a family walking, right? Like kids and women and so on. And he would just shoot them, from the roof. Right? That's how low quality that guy is. Now, you may say he's indoctrinated and brainwashed. I don't know about that. I mean, you can be so much indoctrinated, but ultimately, you really have to stand there and think of what you're doing, right? And I've seen it upon the entry of Iraq, this white American, like there was a car coming right after they entered Baghdad. There was or a different city, and there was a car coming, and he machined it, right? He gunned it, sprayed it with bullets. It turns out to be a family, I think a Christian family. And then the guy went nuts, basically. He didn't know. He says, no. He was like, why? Because his conscience bothered him. So the ranks of Americans are still not void of goodness altogether. No, I can't say that. Now, let me ask you this. This is the important question of this rant, this point about the coward Arabs. You found out, and I had personal experience from Americans, that they no longer look at the Arabs this way. No. You found out how erroneous that history of the Arabs is, or fed into your mind, or given to you, or whatever it is, right? And the question is, and here is the question, what else about the Arabs you've been informed that is wrong? I would say all that you know about the Arabs that has been fed to you by those evil people, communists, like the Russian Trump and whoever it is, and Bush and Netanyahu and what is, and and those evangelists, Israeli evangelists here. What else they told you about the Arabs and their religion, Sunni Islam, that is wrong? If they told you about them being cowards, and that turned out not to be the truth, and you saw them in Syria too, folks, everything they told you about the Arabs, almost everything, is wrong, period. I can tell you that. Arabs are great people, they are faithful, they're all, and so on. And you may say, well, look, they're terrorists. I'm going to tell you something about those terrorists. I'm not going to go into great details, but that guy, Osama bin Laden, here's his fact, and he's still alive. And so is Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, but let's focus on Osama bin Laden, right? His father is from a Jewish descent in Saada, Yemen, the state of Saada, Saada, which is northern Yemen. And the family of bin Laden are Jews, right? His mother is also Syrian, and she is, her last name is Ghanem, and she belongs to the Syrian regime. They're Alawites, they're not Muslims, right? Now, they say they're Alawites, but we have evidence to think that there is certain part of those Alawites are Jews, similar to certain Christians being Jews and Muslims being, certain segment of the Muslims being Jews. And they're we call them usually crypto-Jews, right? I know a few of them myself in Syria. So at any rate, his first wife, the mother of Saad, Saad, who lives in Iran now, is his uncle's daughter. And their last name is also Ghanem. You Americans know this, right? So Sunni Islam has absolutely nothing to do with terrorism. Sunni Islam has not committed one act of terrorism in the West. Not one. Every terrorist act was committed in the West was committed by Shiites, was committed by Alawites, and Putin is not the one to claim innocence from helping those monsters do what they've done, whether it's in September 11 or airplanes or whatever it is, or Orlando or gyms or concerts or whatever it is. Sunnis have nothing to do with that, my friend. I, in fact, question that probably I am the only one who came from the Middle East or from a Muslim nation that is really a Muslim. I don't want to bet money on this, but I know that all those people are largely, who come from the Muslim world, are largely, although they profess to be Muslims, their eyes are Shiites or Alawites or Jews, or mix of the all the above together. So Islam has nothing to do with terrorism. Islam doesn't need to do terrorism. Why? Because you saw them in Syria, you saw them in Iraq. These guys are faithful fighters. They believe in what they're doing. And that's how valuable that Sunni Islam to them is. You guys don't know Sunni Islam. If you knew Sunni Islam as I do, or I would bet you money. And if you're fair enough, you will convert. Believe me. And much of that is known by certain anti-Muslim people, such as the Bin Ladens, such as the Netanyahus, such as the Putins, such as and so on. And much of what they do here in the media and distortion of history and deception is to make you not arrive into the heart of that religion and know what it is. Basic and simple. There is a great effort toward creating barriers and blinding your eyes from that religion. And don't go, let me tell you this, like I told you, I think I'm the only one who comes from those worlds of Islam that is really a Muslim, Sunni Islam. I warn you against those people here that profess to be Muslims, and then you would take them for granted. I'll give you an example. When you go to shows or festivals or something, and then you see those kiosks, some like sell insurance, some sell food, and then there's carousels, playgrounds and so on, and you'd go, it happens here in Illinois. There's certain festival that takes place in the city of Naperville. I don't think it does anymore. But then you will see a small kiosk or a tent that has people sit in it and talking, wanting to show you Islam, right? If you're interested, nobody stops by. And I warn you, folks, don't stop by. These kiosks are not what you think they are. They are there to see who is interested in that religion. And once you stop by and talk to them and so on and so forth, they know you're interested, and you're targeted afterwards immediately by intelligence agencies and so on. Believe me, folks. And many of those people who think they were going to go to the Middle East and join ISIS, right? The ISIS, that Israeli organization, and they eventually get caught. How do you think they get caught? It is ISIS themselves, through the Mossad, that they alert the US authorities. And why do they do that? Because they don't want people to go back there and fight against the Syrian regime, which is as bloody, as foul as that of Putin and that of Iran's regime or Russia regime. Let's go back to the point of communism. First point, communism fighting against the United States. If you look at China, a communist nation, China became what it is financially, industrially, manufacturing, and all that out of the United States and the West in general. The biggest market for China in the world, by far the biggest, is the United States. Yet they fight against the United States on every turn, on every stand, in every stand, on every stop, in every opportunity. They're fighting against the US and teaming up with Russia and teaming up with Iran and the Syrian regime. I do not understand why the United States still deal with them this way, except the establishment in the United States is making sure they're going to do that and destroy the United States. Cuba as well. Wherever there is communism, they fight against the United States. And now it is alive and well in Russia and elsewhere, in Syria and Iran. I call them communism, passively, but you know what they are, really, right? They will not stop now. They will not stop ever. Basic and simple. So if America and Soviet Union were in the ring as two contestants, fighting boxing and so on, America say, delivers a knockout to the Soviet Union. Well, it wasn't America, really. It was really basically the Afghan people, right? And the Arabs, what's called the Arab Afghans, right? And then the Soviet Union basically falls and knockout. Now, instead of finishing the fight, the United States decided to grab that contestant, that opponent, raise him up, stand him up on its feet. And then once that opponent stood up on its feet, the United States has his guard down and looking at him very close, and then goes a sucker punch and knocks out the United States. How dumb can you be, right? That's point number 2, folks. The coward Arabs and then communism. Arabs are no cowards. Arabs are genius. Arabs made the world that we live in now. I myself, I am a mixed race. But I know I have, through the father, I have Arab heritage through the father. And believe me, I wouldn't lose that. It taught me how to be good. It taught me how to be human. It taught me how to be. It's that side that taught me how to be as good as I can be, and to be human, and to love everything that earth, that is nature, that is human, that is anything. It taught me that. It's that side, that those Arabs, that Arab tribe, those old Arab tribes that gave us what it means to be like a tribe or a nation, and they made this new world with their sciences and with their math and calculus, and with their medicine and physics and chemistry and man and justice systems and police and universities. This world that you live in now, folks, it's them who conceived it and fought for it and sacrificed for it and brought it about. Yet now this world is sick with those who hate them. Going on to point number 2, folks. So this point number 3, is about really Putin. When Putin went into Chechnya, in 1 week he murdered 250,000 people, shelling the city of Grozny, which is the capital of Chechnya. The West was silent. Well, the whole world was silent. In fact, they were helping them do what they did. In Syria, they did the same thing. And I have evidence. I was there in 2017. I have evidence that the United Nations was helping them. That alliance of the Syrian regime, which is the Shiites, the Alawites, Putin, the establishment in Turkey, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Muslim Brotherhood, all that was one alliance. And they were going against the Syrian people and their defenders, who were part of the population and the defected army, basic and simple. What happened there is, early on they sent the army, which is largely a Sunni army, to kill the population and quell the demonstrations and so on by live bullets and so on. And they refused, because this is like you, white American, the establishment of Russian shrimp Trump and Obama and Biden and Bush send you to kill your own white people or black people. You wouldn't do that. If you do that, you're sick, right? You're shooting your own family because someone comes from Russia like a couple of generations back with some Germans, right? Or probably name, I don't know, but I think it's an assumed name, and then tells you to go kill your own family. How are you going to do that? So the army defected, and it showed so and so. But then your attitude, and this is the salient point here, the important point. Here you were, and I clearly could see the United Nations was helping all that conglomerate of horror and terror, right, in the Middle East. The United Nations was helping them. Money, and above them Israel, right? Money, intelligence, weapons, you name it. They murdered millions in Syria. Millions, right? And those remaining vast majority of the population remaining of the Sunnis basically were made refugees, right? They were 85%, and now under the areas controlled by the regime, there's no Sunnis. In fact, if there is, that's a matter of time before they're eliminated, right? But then you Americans, here's the important points. You Americans were in your mind, those Sunni Muslims, let them take it. They have nothing to do with terrorism. Terrorism was and is committed by their opponents, the Putins and the Shiites and so on and so forth, strictly speaking. But now, here comes Putin into Ukraine. Ukraine is not a Muslim country. It's a Christian country. In fact, it is as Christian in type and religion and even race as those of Russians. So why is Putin killing them, right? Shelling their cities. Now he's trying to control himself, but when push comes to shove, he is going to murder and maim and destroy those Ukrainians. And what do you got to say to this, right? You Americans, Anglo-Saxons, blacks, what do you got to say to this, right? Oh, those Ukrainians, the Russians, you don't care, right? Believe me, if that's your mentality, whether it was in Syria or Chechnya or now in Ukraine, eventually it'll come to you, right? And then there's not much you can say. Others will stand by, right, looking at you and gloating if anybody else survives of this free world, right? Putin, Putin showed his true colors in Ukraine. Now ask yourself, I'm going to contrast this here. Putin killed millions in Syria for the Assad regime, right? That's not his last name, by the way. His last name is the Beast, wildebeest. Or not wildebeest, the zebra. Yet he has an alliance with the regime in Iran, and supposedly the regime in Iran is Islamic, right? No, you guys, you smart, it's a little bit more complex than that. Oh, you dumb shits, you don't know who is in Iran and who is in Syria and who is in China and so on. You don't know. Some of you do, but I don't know. Will you ever wake up to that fact and realize that hell is coming your way? I hope so. I hope you wake up. So why is Putin showing his true colors now? Killing Ukrainians. These are not Muslims, right? In Mariupol or other cities as well, like destroying buildings and so on and so forth. And then he protects the Syrian regime and then befriends Iran regime and so on and so forth. Why do you think that is? Even though supposedly Putin and the Iran regime are totally different religions. Why do you think that is? Have you ever asked yourself that? So Putin showed his true colors in Ukraine, period. What he is, what he is not, and you're only scratching the surface. When time comes and this guy knows it is safe for his agenda to execute, he will destroy the Ukrainians and turn them into smithereens. Not that he can, but it's his intentions, right? And he will burn them, right? And then who are left of them? He and his cohorts and his minions will make them into animals. Now you Anglo-Saxons, Scandinavians, Germanics, English, Scots, Irish, you're not going to escape his wrath if he's over you. He is going to commit the mother of all blood purges. Why he will do that? Because he wants to make sure, according to his hidden dogma, that the takeover, whether it is formal or not, stays similar to Russia. Russia has been taken over. If you ever think that the Russians are able to get rid of this animal and his polity and his establishment so easily, you think again, Lenin and Stalin made sure that never happens. How did they make sure? Well, you got that history, right? They will do the same thing to the Germanics and Scandinavian period because they want to make sure nobody is left to come back and return the old glory of old Germany and old Scandinavia and old England and old France and so on and so forth, period. They're going to so neutralize you, so paralyze you as a nation, as a race, as a language, as whatever it is that you will never make sure, he will make sure you'll never come back again. That's what's in store for you in Western Europe. Nothing else really. I can't say anything about that. There's something else about September 11. September 11 was not committed by Sunnis, no. These facts are either Shiites or Alawites or combination thereof. Was facilitated by Putin. The original order came from Israel, really. Really, is that bad? Well, they killed JFK and RFK, decapitated the US government, and ever since they run it, right? So, now, Trump said that he saw people dancing. Looked like Middle Eastern. Yeah, we know there were people dancing. And these turned out to be very well-known fact. They were Israeli Mossad. They were not Arabs. I saw some Middle Eastern people being happy in on TV or somewhere else in Palestine or Syria or elsewhere. I assure you, these are not Sunnis. I assure you, these are the Bin Laden type. I assure you. And Bin Laden is not a Muslim. He hates Islam. But that's not your problem. But here's the point. Trump said he saw people dancing. I bet you money that Russian was dancing himself, that Trump. And his cohort of or godfather, Giuliani, he knew that what was coming next day and he was expecting it. On to point number 4, Fox. So, point. What is the relationship of Putin to Iran or the Syrian regime? I mean, supposedly on the outer layer or the appearance of it, or the facade, if you will, they're supposed to be enemies. Supposedly, the Syrian regime and the Iran regime are of Muslim, right? Supposedly of Muslim religion. And he, supposedly, Rabbi Putin, Rabbi Stalin, Rabbi Lenin, and whoever rabbis between them are enemies of Islam, right? You know, these two things are enemies of each other. Two religions, to so on, so on. They fought each other in history. Suddenly, they're so friendly to each other, and so so have affinity, if you will, common interest, common strategy, and everything is the same, really. What is it really about them? You may think, oh, the Shiites are the moderates. That's not the case, folks. The Shiites have a bad history. Shiites are the terrorists, them and the Alawites. Well known, the Alawites and the Shiites now, they give you all kind of histories. They were established by Jews. A rabbi called Abdullah bin Saba, a Yemenite Jew, established the Shiites, helped by another guy called Ka'b al-Ahbar, or the uncle of the rabbis, meaning the big rabbi. And a third rabbi called Safi bin Sa'id. Safi bin Sa'id was in Medina, and then eventually he immigrated to Isfahan, Iran. There was a Jewish community there. They ruled Iran through their Jewish Sassanid or Sassoon dynasty back then. And they established the Shiites basically to split Islam, similar to, if you will, they established Protestantism to kind of cause a chasm in the Catholic Church and cause it to fight each other and so on. But that's what Shiism is. So it's not Islam. Let's put it this way. Now, it's two different things, Shiism. The upper echelons, like the Ayatollahs and Assads and so on, are in fact questionable, right? The lower ranks are Shiites, like what I call the trained dogs and dumb shits. These are the ones who go and commit terrorism, right? That said, these people could be confused also for something else, and they are in fact something else. And these are the assassins, Ashashins, and Europeans, Protestants in particular, have modern dogma that is brought from them. And that dogma was invented, driven from Islam in a way, and was given to them, and that's called assassins, Ashashin or Hashashin. They're similar to Masonry in terms, 666 and devil and good and evil and whatever it's not and so on. And demurge, tricking the spirits to come into this world, and now they can't go back and all that stuff. Folks, that's a folk tale. It's a song that was turned into a religion, right? And that religion, if you think of everything in it, it basically channels you or pushes you or hurts you to become an animal in your behavior, nothing more or less. It puts greed in you, it puts ruthlessness in you, it removes ethics from you, and basically it tells you can do anything without being worried about anything because you're living forever here on earth and so on. you know, and so on. But that's not my subject here. The subject is, if these two folks are, if you know what Putin is by now and what he's doing, whether it's in Ukraine or elsewhere, and now you can see his strategy and his agenda and being he is, and there are people, his alliance, you know, and his umbrella that he is being one of the tripods of Israel, right? Iran and China and and Russia, right? Is it sense of independence that they want to become independent of the West? That's not what it is, folks, because they're dealing with the West day and night. As a matter of fact, Russia and its computing and its technology and so on is stolen, taken from the West, and they deal with America. And I go to the cafes every day. Well, not every day. Whenever I go, I see Russian people in there. So naturally, their leaning should be toward the West and the United States after the collapse of the Soviet Union, because Russia is supposedly a European country. Instead, they take, you know, like drawback, they and China and Iran, and they establish this alliance, yet they cannot exist without the United States and Western Europe in general because of the technology, right? And because of the financial system, supposedly. So they're entwined here, as well as having an alliance against the US elsewhere. So we'll ask yourself, what is the relationship really? Is it masonry? I don't know about that, man. I really recommend you revisit that. I read in the past that Napoleon, he used to fight like the Germans and Austrians and so on. And one day he used to send his Masons into Austria, into the Masonic lodges and so on, and then acquire information about his enemies, the Germans, you know, like, because supposedly Masonry, you know, I don't know, I'm not one, right? Never will be one. Because that's when you become the dog of the Jews, right? He, supposedly they trust each other, you know, their secret is holy, right? But he used to send his spies into the lodges, and that's how he won some wars against them. Like in Germany, there was a battle where he really won big time near the Black Forest or something like that. He got the information by way of Mason and spying on other Masons. So if you think you're helping Iran because of Masonry and against Islam, man, you can't have it more wrong. Islam as the establishment is long gone, and even if it comes back in terms of caliphate or something like that, it'll be so sophisticated and advanced that you will wish to be their friend. Besides, you inherited them. They bequeathed their knowledge and science and society and language and all that to you, right? They were your neighbors in Europe and in the Middle East and so on and so forth. And guess what? You know their history. If you go to a fair historian, go to Europe, it's better than here, right? They will tell you. What did the Russians and Iranians and Chinese give you? Nothing except suck your blood and make you look like a zombie, you Americans. So that's the relationship between Putin and Iran. I recommend you go reconsider and think it over and see what's going on there. On to the next video.